Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. It is the first day of spring today, but the weather outside feels more like winter, full-blown winter. Today I'm going to be potting up some trees. I've got some firethorns that were started from cuttings. I've got a wild almond tree that was started from a seed, and there's a few other ficus cuttings in the same pot. Here is a look at the almond tree. So I planted several seeds in June of 2021, and this is the only tree that survived. So it's doing really well. It's starting to get a woody trunk on it, some branches. So one is better than none, so I will be repotting that today into its own pot. Beside that, I have some Firethorn or Pyracantha cuttings, and I can't remember when I stuck these cuttings in the soil. I think someone visited me in the Bonsai zone and pruned up their Firethorn, and I just stuck all the cuttings in soil and all of them rooted, which I was really surprised because I think it was like the middle of summer. But they're doing really well, so I'll be pruning those up and putting them in their own pots. Beside that, I have some Ficus rumphii cuttings. They've been chilling in the basement and they don't like the cold, but I think the trees are still alive, so I'll be potting those up today. And behind that I have a banyan tree, Ficus bengalensis cutting, and I don't know if that's alive either. They didn't like the cold either. So definitely, you know, your Ficus rumphii and your Ficus bengalensis need a warm winter. I will be pruning up the Pyracanthas, making them more compact, but I'll wait until I get the trees out of the pot and see how much trunk they have, and maybe that'll influence my pruning decisions to get the trees underway as bonsai. I'm going to get the trees out of the pot now. I don't know how to do this, but let's start with the Pyracanthus. Pulling on those, they'll probably have the largest root system. Oh, does not want to come out of the pot. Well, I'll loosen it up, the edges here, and see if I can pop everything out of the pot here. Oh, there's a Ficus microcarpa cutting in here too. I didn't even notice that. There it comes. So the soil's quite dry. I haven't been watering them a lot in the winter. I've been keeping the trees on the dry side. So I'll start raking out the soil and trying to separate all the trees. So the Pyracanthas, they really like a cool period in winter, and they need that to flower and get berries on them. So you need kind of you need to protect them. If I left them, you know, outside in the polyhouse, the unheated polyhouse, I think they would die. So you need kind of ideal temperatures are just above freezing. And the almond tree, I was quite surprised how well it did having a cold winter. I thought it would need to be warmer, more like a tropical tree, but it seemed to do really well, you know, having a cold period in the winter. So I'll continue to do that. I'll continue to give the almond a cool spell in the winter. And hopefully, you know, it'll grow into a bonsai someday. I was happy that I got at least one almond tree from all those seeds I planted. And this is a wild almond or bitter almond. It's not the kind that's cultivated, you know, for edible nuts. And I did eat one of the seeds in my video where I was planting them, and apparently that wasn't a good idea because they have cyanide in the seeds, and they're quite poisonous. And you'd have to eat quite a few of them to feel the effects of the poison, but still, probably wasn't a good idea to be eating these wild almonds. However, I didn't feel any ill effects or anything, so I survived. Yeah, I think it said you'd need to eat like 50 of them or something to, you know, have any toxicity. So I will continue combing out the roots and separating the trees, and then we'll come back and have a look at the root systems on them and, you know, prune up the roots, pot them up, and do some top pruning on the trees. I've got all the trees separated, and I'm going to begin with the largest Firethorn here. So it's got quite a root system. It's a little one-sided, but it's not too bad. I pruned up the first Pyracantha or Firethorn. I did quite a bit of root pruning, trying to get a nice radial root base. I did a lot of pruning on the top of the tree, trying to get a nice tree-like form, and I think it's looking really good. I missed filming it because my battery went dead and I didn't notice. And, you know, these cameras don't have any beeping sounds or anything when the battery dies, unfortunately. So, yeah, all I can do is show you the result and what I pruned off, which is quite a bit. You know, all these long shoots were coming up here. I'm not going to plant any of the cuttings because I have way too many trees. So I'm just going to develop these trees. So that is the first Pyracantha pruned up. I'll start on the second one and you'll see all that. So this tree's looking really good. I'm very pleased with the shape of it. Here is a look at Pyracantha number 2. So you can see the root system is very one-sided. I don't think there's anything growing out this side of the root system. So we'll prune it up. I'll do a profile prune to the roots, just getting rid of all these really long ones. Like that. And then I need to look at the root system and kind of pick a style for this tree. I'll get rid of this root that sticks up here. Yeah, so to get a radial root system, eventually most trees will grow a radial root system. If it's one-sided like this, you just wait, and as the tree gains vigor, it sends out new roots and it'll eventually get a radial root system. So that's what I think my plan will be. I am going to reduce the tree in height. I could prune it off to that first branch. I could leave part of this trunk line on, pruning it back, maybe this new tall leader off. So I've got 2 branches here, some up here, so I think I'll just take the top off the tree right here, like that. That gets the tree a little more compact. I'll just prune this one back to, I'll go right back to the first set of leaves. Keep this tree compact. And then as far as the roots, there's one here that's growing down, and I have some subdivisions up top, so I'll prune that downward part away. There's one here that's growing 90 degrees to the root. I'll get rid of that. I'll shorten these ones. Shorten that one. Shorten all these. This one's going a strange direction. I'll prune off the bottom of the root base a little flatter. And that's about all I can do to that tree. I'll plant it, and hopefully I'll get more roots growing in this direction in the future. So that can go over here ready for planting. And I'll get out the next tree, which will be my wild almond. So here is a look at the root base on that, and it's very wild, that's for sure. So, the plan is to tame the root base somewhat. I don't want this one curling up and around, so I'm going to take that off. So here I go. Like that. Then I have one growing straight down here. I'll reduce that back like that.
And this was grown from a seed, and you generally get some pretty wild root bases from seeds. It takes a bit of sorting to get them looking good. This one's growing back in on the root base. I'll take that out. I can reduce this one back. And where is the question? I think right back to here. There's one sticking up here. I've got to take it off. It's a nice looking root, but it's just growing the wrong direction. And also these ones. There's a little one there, and this one's growing up too far, so I'm going to get rid of that. Which doesn't leave me with a lot of roots, but prune this one back. That one's actually growing a bad direction. That'll have to come off in the future, but for now I'll leave it on. Yeah, so that's kind of got the roots pruned to the minimum. And now I've got to prune the top of the tree. And I have a good opportunity here on the top. You can see this is an extension of the vertical trunk. So I'm going to reduce this side trunk, which is the really vigorous one, right back. There's buds down here. So I'll develop this straight one as my leader. Just taking a stub off there. So I need to prune that back quite hard. And I think I'm going to go, there's some buds here, but there's a good outward facing bud right here, so I'll prune just above that. Like that. Taking the whole top off the tree. And that is also ready for planting now. Next I have a ficus, and I think it's a Tigerbark Ficus. It's got the pointy leaves on it. And yeah, it's got the start of a good root system. I've got to prune this taproot off here. It's just too vigorous. I'll prune back these long ones. There's some aerial roots up here which I'll prune away. It's too early to develop aerial roots on the tree. Prune up some stubs. Ficus microcarpa can take the cold much better than some of the other ficus. This root, you can see it goes a nice radial direction, then it takes a turn, so I'll prune off the part. This one's too long without any subdividing, so I'll prune that one back. You know, it'll basically end up as a cutting in the end, but it has a lot of roots growing in a radial direction here, which will be good for the future. And then I want to prune back the top of the tree. It's too large, so I'll prune to outward facing leaves. This one to here. This one to here. And I don't think I want this one on the inside here. I'm going to remove that. There's one on the inside here. I'll remove that. There's a stub I can take off here. And I think that's about it. I've got, it comes up, it divides, it has a branch here, and then comes up a little further and divides into two. It's pretty close to having 3 branches in one spot. I could prune away one of them. It all depends on how large a tree you want to grow it. If I want to keep it a small tree, well, this branch is quite acceptable. There's enough distance here. But if I was to grow into a larger tree, it would just look like all 3 branches are coming from the same spot. So I already have a lot of mini ficus, so I don't think I want to keep it small. And I think this branch is growing kind of from the inside of the curve of this one, so I'm going to take this one off. If I'd taken this one off, it would have been fine too, but in fact, I am going to take that one off. I'm just going to keep the trunk with 1 leaf or 2 leaves up here, and that's ready for planting. Next, I have these Ficus rumphis, which I wasn't sure if they were alive, but they are. The roots look quite healthy. And there is, buds, healthy branches up here. They're all dormant, but I'll do what I can with it. Prune off an upward facing root there. I need to prune this root back. You can see here's radial. It's kind of cranked over a bit, so I'm going to prune it off quite short. This one grows nice and then it starts growing upwards, so I'll take that one back like that. This one also, it's radial and then it takes a turn, so I'll take that part off. Prune the bottom flat, and that is about it for that tree. Not much of a root system, but something. And then I'm wondering, should I prune the top of it back to a stump and just see what happens? I don't really want, a big tall tree like this. I have another one on the go that's doing really well in the plant room. So I think I will take a chance and just prune it off and see what happens. So right to here, like that. So that'll be planted as a stick in a pot, but it may develop into something in the future. So next I have another Ficus rumphii cutting, and it has very little roots, radial roots, but it developed one big thick root. So I'm just going to prune that off and then replant it with what little roots it has down there, and I'll also cut that back as a stump. And I'm not even sure if this trunk is alive. The bark's shriveled. The root was healthy, but I'll just take a chance. Let me see. Oh, that looks dead, the trunk. It may, sprout something from the root base here, but I'm going to discard it. I think it's just not worth growing. And maybe some of these other little ones aren't either. You can see this trunk is all shriveled. The roots are alive, so if I warmed it up, it would probably send out a new shoot, but I don't need that. And this one, it looks healthy up to about here. Let's see if it's alive. Nah. It's alive there. So I will plant this one. Prune off basically most of the roots and plant it as a little stub beside that other one. And then my last tree, I have the Ficus bengalensis, the banyan tree. It also, the roots are alive. They're not doing really well. It does not like the cold basement. This tree needs to be kept warmer over the winter. But you can see the original cutting, the top of it died and then it sent out a new branch here. So I will prune that dead part off and I'll see, below if there's green. Yeah, there's sap flow there. So it's definitely alive. And I think I'll just plant it like that. That root doesn't look too good there. Prune these back a little further. Yeah, I think most of those roots died off, but there's a few that were alive. Yeah, so I'll plant that as a cutting, or as a rooted cutting, I guess, and just see what happens. When you get a pot full of cuttings, some were hardy like the Pyracanthas and the Almond. They can take the cold, and some of these other trees can't, and I should have separated them in fall, keeping the tropical trees tropical and the temperate trees cooler, but I just ran out of time. So it is time to plant trees now. Out of all the trees I pruned up today, this Pyracantha I think has the best possibility of becoming a really good quality bonsai in the future. So I am giving it a very nice pot. This is a bidet pot. It's a really nice pot for it. I think it'll suit the tree. And I think by the end of summer, this tree will look very, very nice as it grows. Yeah, so this pot was given to me, and it's a really nice pot. So that's what the Pyracantha will go in. An awesome pot for, I think, an awesome tree for the future. I'll put a drainage screen in the bottom of the pot and add a base layer of soil. I think that's good. And then I'll get the tree planted and I'll put it in the middle of the pot, and I will just make sure the roots are sorted out. Yeah, I think that's good, and the height in the pot is quite good. It'll bury the root base. And I'll work that soil into the roots. Here comes the sun. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, so cold weather tonight. We're going down to minus 11 degrees Celsius, which is very, very cold. I'll have to keep the heat on here in the greenhouse, keep all my newly repotted trees above freezing. If possible, I think it will. Okay, so I need to top the soil level up just a bit. The tree feels stable in the pot. Settle that soil in. And I can give the tree a water. Okay, here I go with the water. This is the first time this tree's had sunshine since last fall. It's been under the grow lights in the basement, chilling out. I'll spin the tree around so you can see it from all angles. So here we go. So there, I finally have a Firethorn. The next tree I'll pot up is my wild almond tree. Trying to pick a front for it. I guess it doesn't really matter too much at this stage, so I'll put it in right there. I'll just make sure those roots are kind of arranged. What roots are left on it, like that. And then I'll add my soil. Just tamp it down. I don't have to work the soil into the roots because there's only 2 major roots and the soil will just flow around them. So I can just add a little more soil. This pot's maybe a little large for the tree, but hopefully it'll grow into it by the end of the year. Yeah, I think that's good. And I'll give the tree a water. Its new home for 2024. I'll rotate the almond around so you can see it from all angles. So here I go. Right hand side, the back, the left hand side, and back to a possible front. Next, I'll pot up my little ficus. I think it's a Tigerbark Ficus. And it's going in an Eldon lease pot. Eldon was one of the founders of the Kitchener-Waterloo Bonsai Society. Now, is that too low? It might be. I may have to raise the tree up a bit. A little more soil. Okay, that's potted up. And I'll give the ficus a water. I'll rotate the ficus around. Not much to look at yet, but hopefully it'll develop into a nice tree. Next, I'll pot up my other Firethorn, and it's also going in a ceramic pot. This pot was just from the thrift store. So here I go. The roots were good. It's just a intermediate stage for this tree to try and get the root system underway and grow with a little strength this summer, hopefully. Here is a look at Firethorn number 2, rotating it around. I have decided that these ficus cuttings, the bengalensis and the rumphii, are just not worth potting up. I have trees of them that I'm developing, and I don't need more, especially tropical trees. So I'm going to discard these. Sorry, ficus, but I just, yeah, I mean, if I grew them, I would just be growing them to give them away, which is nice to do, but I just don't have any room in the plant room to be doing that. So they're going to go in the compost heap. I hate doing it, but it's just the fact of life. I do not need more tropical trees. Here's a look at the 4 trees I potted up today. So it's really nice to get that pot full of cuttings and seedlings separated into individual pots where they'll get proper care and attention in the future. I think everyone who grows bonsai has a pot full of weeds and cuttings and seedlings that need some attention. Otherwise, you know, they just get neglected and they never really amount to much until you take the care and the effort to actually start growing them as bonsai, which I've tried to do today. Potting up 4 trees and getting them underway as bonsai is a good way to start off spring. Yesterday I went to Isabella's and I dropped off all those little mini bonsai pots I made over the winter. So they'll be getting their bisque firing within a week or 2, and then I'll go back and apply the oxides and glazes to them, and they'll get their final firing. So that's exciting. So that'll be coming up, and I'll show you that process. And that is all for the first day of spring. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.